You all set?
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's Planning Commission. It's October 23rd, 2024. We have Commissioners Hoth, Larson, and Patterson, and then Chair, myself, Kerr, here in attendance. I think others are not going to be here today, but we still have a quorum, so that's nice. Welcome, everybody. This is the biggest turnout we've had since they got rid of the trailer park, so this is this is nice. This is nice. And if any of you attended that one went till 1 a.m. So it was fun. It wasn't. It was, I mean, it was a battle between private rights and public good.
We set a record that night.
Yeah, we set a record. So anyways, we're going to start with a legislative prayer and a thought from Vice Chair Patterson, and then we'll do a Pledge of Allegiance.
So, my thought is this. Can you hear me? I can hardly hear me, sorry. I'll go close. My thought is this. It's the time for voting, and politics are crazy. And people are choosing to like people or not like people based on their political views. And when I look around, even my kids, our house is a divided home in how we view things. And the bottom line is, I tell my kids, I'm going to say the same thing here, just be kind. We're here to help one another. Just be kind. Politics shouldn't divide us like that. And we're still neighbors, we're still a society, we're still friends. So that's my thought for tonight. Just still be friends and still be nice. Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity to come together as citizens of this community in Centerville. We're grateful that we have the opportunity to live here. We ask that thou would please be with us this night so that we may hear well and make correct decisions and help the citizens. And we are grateful to live in Centerville. We are grateful for this opportunity to be here. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Right, if you'll all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have one business item on our agenda today, the public hearing on the zoning code amendment as proposed by Petitioner Hutchins. Mr. Eggett, you leading out on this?
Yes.
All right,
yeah.
go ahead.
So as you noted, the applicant is Nicole Hutchins. The request is a zoning code amendment to Centerville zoning code 12.12.040, which is a definitional addition, and 12.36.040, the table of uses for commercial uses. Those are the two areas that are being requested to be amended. So the first amendment specifically is noted on your screen is that definitional addition of body art to be body art including but not limited to cosmetic, permanent makeup, provide a service and support for individuals recovering from non-elective surgeries that attempt to restore original aesthetic. And she had added in parentheses this next statement, i.e. nipple reconstruction with tattooing and general body art, both fine line and traditional ink. I don't know if in a final format that would be the way that it would be best be worded or not, or if we just add fine line and traditional ink and reconstruction or what. Anyway, bottom line is that's the request. The second item that's being requested is amend the table of uses by adjusting the naming convention from tattoo establishment to body art studio. So a complete transfer of that terminology. Tattoo establishment would go away, body art studio would come into place of that, with that above definition noted. And then the third one would be to allow for the use of body art studio in any commercial zone. The only thing that wasn't clear to staff when that came in is whether that allowance would be requested to be defined as a permitted or conditional use within any of the commercial zones. So that's something that definitionally we would have to identify. Public hearing was posted for the proposed zoning code amendment request, and the public hearing notice was posted in accordance with state and city code requirements. So the first key analysis point that we always do is the general plan. We look at the general plan. The only section of the general plan that applies to this is 12-430 commercial industrial development. And I pulled specifically 12-430-1 talking about the need for commercial industrial development. And it's a very broad, for lack of a better word, vanilla statement talking about the commercial district and if you'll go to the second document, you'll go up one, that one. And I'm on page 2. Yeah, there we go. So you can see right there, 12-430-1. So it just outlines broadly that commercial and industrial property assessment has value to the community. Commercial properties bring renewed, or not renewed, reduced burden to the residents of the community in the form of obviously tax relief and other benefits and amenities to the overall coffers of the community. So that's the one that seemed most pertinent with the request. We're talking about other forms of commerce or service provision to the community that it would fit best in that category. So moving on to page 3, the next step is looking at specifically the requests. And I tried to go through each of the 3 requested points in my review in that order. So the first is the definition. So as you look at the definition, currently in CZC 12.12.40, we have a definition for permanent cosmetics. And it says what it says on there, that a cosmetic treatment involving the controlled insertion of pigment to the skin as a means of producing designs that resemble makeup, such as eyebrows and eyelining and other natural enhancing colors to the face, lips, and eyelids and hairline. Permanent cosmetic is solely for enhancing facial features that are already present or to provide artificial eyebrows for those who have lost them as a consequence of old age, chemotherapy, genetic disturbance, and disguised scars and skin conditions. It may be referred to as semi-permanent because occasional touch-ups are required. What that's saying, if you're not familiar, is it's a form of pigmentation of the eyebrows, which is tattooing in some ways to look at it, right? That's what it's talking about, that is something that the code does allow for in the form of a permanent cosmetic enhancement. So just to be clear what we're talking about.
Did you just say does or does not?
It is allowed.
Does.
Yeah. And it's specifically to help individuals with old age disease, chemotherapy, genetic disturbance, scars, etc. Or, there may be other pigmentation treatments and those sorts of things. There's discoloration in the face. Again, you can permanently change the coloration of the skin cells to reflect a natural look, is the bottom line. So permanent cosmetics, as you look at the personal care service definition, is establishment primarily engaged in the provision of frequently or recurrently needed services of personal nature. And as you notice, as you look at that list, you'll see permanent cosmetics is in there almost at the beginning of that. But on the flip side, at some point within the recent years, there's an addition, or I guess maybe a clarification, that this term excludes tattoo establishment. So at some point through whatever last 5-10 years, I don't know exactly the timeline of when these codes were established, there was a discussion about kind of the very thing we're talking about tonight. Permanent cosmetic versus tattoo, what does the city allow, what does the city not allow? So just for the point of kind of looking at the historical situation, I talked to the business licensing official, or the business licensing specialist as well, and got some information from her, and there had been discussions, I don't know how many years ago, I didn't look at the history of the dates, but this has been discussed in the last, 5-10 years, sounds like, from talking to her. And then obviously tattoo establishment is there straight out, any location, place, area, structure, or business used for the practice of affixing a permanent mark or design on or under the skin by a process of cutting for the purpose of scarring or pricking or ingraining an indelible pigment, dye, or ink in the skin, or instruction for such practice. The term excludes permanent cosmetics. So again, there's direction to the public and to those of us that are looking at land use approvals and business licensing that this now says tattoos are not permanent cosmetics for the purposes of the Centerville City's code, the definitional nature of the code. Okay, so that hopefully helps to clarify at least where we're going with the next part of the discussion. So the request here is that there be now this term body art studio, which becomes a new evergreen statement in place of tattoo establishment. And the city has historically, as you could see, created a very definite distinction between permanent cosmetics and tattoo establishment. And so the concern from zoning staff as we looked at it is with these very clear, I guess, directives that are already established in the code, by adding a third category, body art studio, that becomes a replacement of tattoo establishment and creates a new definition that includes permanent cosmetics. It creates a nature of confusion and uncertainty in how to apply that as businesses come forward. Is this business a permanent cosmetics business? Is this a body art studio? What are we talking about? And so there's some definitional challenges with that kind of a request and adding that term. So that's what you'll see at the top of page 4 as a concern with the request. Now, there is, and I'm not an expert at this, the applicant can explain this better than I can. There is a type of tattoo, which are fine line tattoos, and I don't understand the distinction between how big it takes for it to go from a fine line tattoo to a tattoo, right? I don't understand the distinction of it, and I'm sure the applicant might have a better understanding of where that crosses that line. But you look at the statement, fine line tattoos as a category, although they may be small and simple in form, are still a type of tattoo, and when currently, by our current standard, our current definition require a tattoo establishment category business in order to be provided as a service option to the members of the Centerville community. Hence the request, hence one of the reasons that we're here tonight discussing this. Okay, so let's move on to now the matrix discussion. So under the category of tattoo establishment in the table of uses for commercial uses, if you look at that attachment, it is not permitted in any zone, including industrial or commercial, in any of them. So for whatever reason, the city up to this point has not permitted that kind of use in those zones, right? So it creates a question as to, okay, what is the reasoning for that? And then maybe there's a bigger question which we can discuss a little further as we talk about this. Should there be an evaluation of a zone or zones, even conditionally, that might afford for tattoo establishments? Are we in essence being somewhat discriminatory about uses by not even allowing one zone to have it be an option for that type of business within the community? So that's just something to think about as we go through this, right? But the request from the applicant is that all commercial zones be allowed to have this category of body art studio. And so it creates a question of, are they all going to be permitted? Are they all going to be conditional? Is that really what we're comfortable with? What if we have multiple commercial interests? We now say even they're conditional in the commercial medium, commercial high, commercial very high. Are we now going to see a bunch of tattoo shops or tattoo requests come in the community? How do we want to regulate those? It brings a lot of questions to the table that become hard for city staff potentially to administrate. And so it'd be almost better to have a good, thorough discussion about, is there a zone that would be more appropriate for this kind of discussion, and would that be a conditional or permitted use, or zones, right, specifically? So that's what that paragraph on the top of, or I guess the second paragraph of page 5 is alluding to. And then the last item, or page 4, sorry. The last item is then the entire removal of the tattoo establishment. Again, this comes back to what I was saying before. When does it go from a fine line tattoo to a tattoo? When does it go from a body art studio establishment to a tattoo establishment? Or are we comfortable saying all body art tattoo, or all body art studios in essence are fine for any type of tattoo? And that was the concern with the way that the applicant has requested that, is it becomes overly broad and hard to apply when you think about, are we comfortable with any tattoo establishment technically be now called a body art studio? Again, if we're okay with that, then we probably need to discuss that and how we're going to regulate and apply that acceptance of that request. So that's the third point. And so as I know, in summary, the proposed text amendments that have been presented by the applicants are each concerning for different reasons, as noted above. The unforeseen impacts of these changes are of significant concern to city staff, as are the challenges that would likely come from broad application of the requested change to all the established commercial zoning districts of the city. City staff are sympathetic to the fact that there may be unique situations where restorative body tattooing is tied to body reconstruction efforts of an individual, or maybe even very minor fine line tattoos. The challenge is how to best regulate restorative tattoos and minor fine line tattoos as a separate use category from tattoos that are applied within a tattoo establishment. Maybe there is a potential approach to be explored for limited restorative tattoos and or minor fine line tattoos being recognized somehow as part of the permanent cosmetics definition within the zoning codes. Again, that is if we are thinking maybe there's a very narrow way to allow fine line tattoos and then define what those mean as part of permanent cosmetics. I don't know. That was just brainstorming some ideas to get you thinking about what you think about the request. So at current time, based upon the nature of the confusion and how to apply the request, the recommendation from staff, currently community development staff, is the denial to the city council, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't something that's being looked at here from a potential zoning discrimination perspective that we maybe need to explore at a future date as we discuss zoning codes and look at updating zoning standards and see if there is a way to allow for what the applicant is requesting and or re-look at tattoo establishments altogether and see if there's a place that they ought to be at least considered for the sake of discussion and eventual potential presentation to the city council and the city as a whole. So with that, you'll see that there are sample motions that have been provided in the packet for you. I have talked to our city attorney. I do understand that there was some conversation about findings 1 and 2 that maybe they may or may not be applicable. I don't know that staffs really feel strong one way or another, but the nature of the request was what was supporting 1 and 2 is so broadly being applied may not be in the best commercial interests of the city. So broadly being applied or defined may not be a benefit to the city or commercial growth opportunities within the city. But even 3, 4, and 5 are still good findings if you felt comfortable with those and weren't sure that you agreed with findings 1 and 2. And then clearly you can see the motion to table, to approve, and approve with modifications thereafter. So I know it's a lot of information. The only final things I'll note is the applicant, or we've provided you with the table of uses, the general plan language, the public hearing document, the applicant's application showing that the fees have been paid and everything's been submitted that's required, the supportive information that was provided by the applicant explaining her interest in the request and why she's requesting it, and then further definitions and I guess proposals showing what is the request from the applicant. And then the last two you'll see are images showing what a fine line tattoo might look like, whether it's minor in nature. So with that, I know it's a little lengthy, but I appreciate you hearing me out, and I'll defer back to you, Chair Carey, to move forward as you see fit. Thank you.
Okay, so, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Ms.
And
Romney.
I just wanted to add a few things, if that's okay.
Please.
As I think our community development director has pointed out, there are some potential legal issues with a total ban on tattoo parlors. I think this is a historic provision of our code, and we did carve out an exception, and I think it was in 2019 when we allowed it's the permanent cosmetics. We were trying to carve that out to allow the applicant that wanted to do that type of activity in the city. But anyway, the Arizona Supreme Court has held that tattoos are a form of speech, and therefore that the art of tattooing is a form of expressive activity protected by the First Amendment. And there's also been decisions out of the 9th Circuit and the 11th Circuit, but Utah is in the 10th Circuit. And so just in a brief research in getting ready for tonight, I didn't see any case law from the 10th Circuit. But anyway, I just wanted to raise that issue, that the city is mindful that a total ban on tattoo parlors may not be, something that's sustainable. We may want to look at that in allowing it in certain areas of the city. I also looked at a number of other cities. It looks like a number of cities in Utah do have total bans on tattoos, so Utah might have a different law or different, case law than these other circuits. But again, I think as staff is recommending, it might be something that we want to look at. I think staff's position in terms of recommending denial for this text amendment is based upon the fact that it's overly broad and it doesn't fit into our standard terms that, as stated in the staff report, it just creates confusion. And it's also not specific in terms of, permitted or conditional. Obviously, we could add a recommendation regarding that. But those are some of my thoughts. I also think it's helpful to understand that there are Utah statutes that govern tattooing, and I think very recent legislation that now talks about the term body art facility and body art. It also defines branding. So these are different things. There's branding, there's tattooing, there's body piercing, there's microblading, which we have talked about, and I believe we permit in Centerville. Ear piercing, we also permit, and then permanent cosmetics, which we also permit. But what we don't permit under our code is the tattooing and the body art facility as proposed in this text amendment. And we also prohibit branding. And Davis County also has regulatory authority and has adopted a regulatory framework for licensing these types of facilities. But the state is also getting, the Department of Health in the state of Utah is also getting involved with some recent legislation regarding, protection of the public for these types of facilities. So hopefully that gives you a framework that we're open as staff to allowing tattooing in the city, but we believe it requires a more holistic approach, in looking at our code and understanding the state provisions and coming up with some better provisions.
Great, thanks for that addition, I appreciate it. My first question is to both of you. So as I was reading the proposed text amendment, I was a little surprised that we had a total ban. And then I was looking at the table of uses, and we have a total ban on liquor stores, taverns, pawn shops, tattoo establishments, but I didn't see massage parlors in there. We don't have a provision on massage parlors, do we?
Well, it depends. We have a lot of lengthy definitions, and so
Could be
depends
in
whether
there.
you consider that a professional service or, so I don't know off the top of my head where massage parlors would fit in and
'Cause
how
I'm-
that's defined, but we do allow professional services.
Right. The only reason I was wondering is that if we're going to have a total ban on something, we've got to have a good reason for doing so.
Agreed.
Especially if it's borderline First Amendment. So I was just wondering if the health, safety, welfare reasons, the police power reasons for our total bans, I just wanted to see what categories we have total bans on. Can you think of any others that we have bans on besides those ones that I listed? I know that I'm putting you on the spot.
One money,
Oh,
Cash-based or cash and loan, check cashing and check loan
Yeah,
services.
Yes.
short-term loan.
And
yeah,
I,
under our definitions. I mean, some things are banned because we don't define them, and
Right.
then we can see if they fit within one of ours by a community development director or zoning administrator interpretation. So somehow, some things are similar enough to our use table, but some things are not, and so they're just excluded and by exclusion not allowed.
Got
But
it. All right.
yeah, I'm not familiar, that's another good one to
we
discuss. but-
we could research it certainly and bring that
No,
back as well.
no
But
reason to
yes.
do that. I'm just trying to
But the
wrap
ones
my-
you named, yeah.
Yeah, wrap my head around the cause and the effect that we're addressing in having that type of zoning.
Yes, and the governmental purpose that we're,
Correct.
Yeah.
why we have that. But I think it is interesting that these new cases challenging bans on tattoo parlors under the First Amendment are fairly new. The Arizona case was 2012, so, in the last,
Okay.
fairly recent history.
Frozen yogurt places, is that why we don't have them anymore? I really enjoyed, what was it? Whatever.
Oh, yeah. I
Get
missed
that
that
off.
too. Yeah.
Boy, you are wading in
Some
quick.
things come and go.
All right, so other questions for staff, guys?
Not at this moment.
So I have a question. So the term body art, it sounds like that's been used in other cities. But as I understand it, it's not proposed here that body art would replace either permanent cosmetics or tattoo establishments. It would be a third category.
No,
No,
it's
it
being,
could
it's
replace
being
it.
proposed to replace tattoo establishment. Yeah.
All right, and is that, Lisa, I think you mentioned that term, body art, has shown up in other places in the state?
Yes, so the state definition of a body art facility means a facility where individuals practice or instruct body piercing, branding, permanent cosmetics, scarification, or tattooing. So state law is similar to the proposal of saying, hey, we're not calling it tattooing, tattooing is a subcategory now of body art. So
Okay.
that's the new term. I believe Davis County also uses the term body art and body art facility.
Okay.
So that is the direction that regulation and legislation is going.
Okay. And Michael, if you could clarify a little bit, so you expressed that there's some concern that it would be additional administrative burden on the city, if there were body art studios. I'm curious how that would be above and beyond what might be needed for, say, a barber shop or a beauty salon or anything else.
It's because, what I was getting at is if it's broadly applied to commercial medium, commercial very high, commercial high, what are the criteria and standards? If we just approve what's being requested, we don't know if it's gonna be conditional and permitted. Are we comfortable, and is I guess the nature of the community comfortable with what's being requested for it to be in all commercial zones? And then as such, what are the criteria? Whereas right now, it's not real clear. So the overly broad nature of it creates the confusion. So if the
So
community.
it would almost always be conditional.
Well, it depends, right? But even if we set it up as conditional, are we comfortable as a city in saying in all commercial zones, tattooing is an option with a conditional use permit? Or are we wanting to say, we don't want it on Main Street, but we're okay with it being in the commercial very high, which is over by Target and Walmart? You know, that's the nature of what I'm saying in my statement,
Okay.
that confusion. It makes it hard to understand the will and then apply that will, especially not even knowing what the criteria are for applying it as is being requested tonight.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there couldn't be a discussion down the road to work through that confusion and the unknown nature, unforeseen circumstances, but that hasn't been vetted as part of what's being requested tonight specifically.
Thank you.
Additional questions for staff? Okay, so we're going to turn to the applicant. This is not the public phase yet, but if the applicant would like to come forward, and we'll ask you questions, and we'd like to ask you, I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of questions. Go ahead and tell us your name, where you live, and what your application is about.
I'm Nicole Hutchins. I live in Centerville, just on Brookhurst Circle. And what was the other question?
Tell us about your application.
Just to your question, I think maybe the reason I worded the application as body art facility was because that is what the health department issued the salon I currently work at, which is New Trends across from Taco Time. They issued me a body art permit, and under that permit, I can do permanent makeup and my piercing. And along with, I did apply for the tattooing because instead of maybe having to go back later and, you know, have them come back out and do my pass-offs and all that stuff, I did that all at once. And so the salon already obtains a body art permit from the health department. And then there was a question on why I guess maybe, what was the other question that I wrote down? Oh, the zoning. The reason that I wrote it for all commercial zones was because the salon is currently zoned medium, is that what it
Commercial
is?
medium, correct.
Instead of high commercial. So like high commercial being over by like Walmart or Target, the rent there is astronomical, and there's not really somewhere over by Joann's or somewhere that I could go and just work as myself, where at New Trends, I'm already able to perform the permanent makeup and the piercing. I have space. I already have the permit from the health department. So it makes sense to me to be able to do it in a medium zone, because I'm already there doing the other things that fall under the body art permit. So that was why when I wrote that, obviously I know nothing about any of this stuff that you guys do. Like, I vote and that's it. I know nothing else about all of this. But that's why when I wrote that was because I didn't know how else to say, I need to be able, or I want to be able to stay at the salon. I want to stay there and work where I'm already, it doesn't make sense for me to do my permanent makeup there and my piercing there and then have a whole other place I pay rent to be able to do my tattooing. And a lot of my clients that do get permanent makeup and piercings also get tattoos. So you can come here for this, but you have to go across town to do this. So that's why I wrote it that way. If there's a better way to write it so I can stay at a medium zone, that's why I did that.
Okay, excellent. Questions for the applicant?
Well, we were talking before about sorry.
You're okay.
Fine line tattoos.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I wrote something down. Is it okay if I read that?
Yes,
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak before you this evening. My name is Nicole Hutchins. I have lived in Centerville since 1993. I attended J.A. Taylor Elementary, Centerville Junior High, and I graduated from Beaumont High School. I'm a wife to Cody and a mom to 5 really great kids. I'm a permanent makeup artist, a fine line tattoo artist, and a hollow needle piercer. I'm here tonight to advocate for a change that reflects our community's evolving values and supports artistic expression, creativity, and inclusivity. Specifically, the legalization of tattooing in Centerville, amending the code to allow for any use in any commercial zone, which I just told you why. Tattoos are not merely body art, they are a form of self-expression and cultural significance for many individuals. As our community grows and diversifies, it is vital that our regulations keep pace with the changing landscape of personal freedoms and artistic endeavors. Tattoos play a crucial role in the healing journey for many individuals facing physical and emotional challenges. For instance, medical tattooing is a specialized art that offers significant benefits to patients recovering from surgeries, trauma, other life-altering experiences, for example, those that have undergone mastectomies due to a cancer diagnosis. The artistry of medical tattooing can restore not only their physical appearance, but their sense of identity and self-worth. I do believe there is a lack of information on tattooing. It has changed significantly over the past decade. In Centerville, currently, I am legally able to tattoo permanent makeup on a client's face, i.e. eyeliner, eyebrows, lips. But I cannot tattoo an initial or a symbol on someone's arm, even though I am using the exact same needle size and the exact same tattoo machine to perform both forms of art. Cities in our great state and even in our same county have recognized the economic benefits of a more open tattoo culture. By allowing artists to operate, we can support local business, create jobs, attract artists and clients from neighboring areas. This can also boost our economy and enhance our cultural landscape. Additionally, it is important to note that our police force here in Centerville recently has established a tattoo policy for themselves that acknowledges the presence of tattoos in professional settings. This acceptance underscores a broader societal shift towards recognizing tattoos as a normal part of personal and professional identity rather than the stigma. Embracing the tattoos fosters a sense of community. It allows us to celebrate our differences and create a space that everyone feels accepted. Revising the tattoo laws can pave the way for greater awareness and acceptance of all forms of tattooing, medical and artistic alike. It sends a powerful message that we prioritize health, healing, and personal expression. Like I touched on a minute ago, for me to be able to work in the city that I live and I love, it's actually a game changer for my family, my kids, for me to be close to home, close to their schools if something happens, and to work in the salon where I'm already established and I have clients and all my supplies are there, and it just, yeah. In closing, I urge the commission and council to consider the profound impact that a change in our tattoo regulations could have. Let us embrace all forms of tattooing as a legitimate and vital practice within our city and support initiatives that empower our residents to heal and express themselves fully. Let Centerville be the city that celebrates diversity, supports local entrepreneurs, and recognizes the importance of personal expression. I urge you to consider the positive impact of this change and move forward with amending our regulations to allow tattooing in Centerville in any commercial zone, but yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Questions for the applicant? I think you had started with one.
Oh, yeah, sorry, and I said, can I read that?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have questions?
I have a few.
Okay.
But I just wanted you to define, like Mike was talking about before, the difference between fine tattooing, fine line.
Yeah.
And then going into a tattoo, so.
So fine line tattooing versus traditional tattooing is the needle size, and usually the size of the piece. So I attached some of the artwork. I don't know if they can pull that up. That's like really zoomed in. Maybe it's because of how I
That's how it shows up in the packet.
sent it over.
Yeah.
So the needle size is significantly smaller. So this is probably not going to make a lot of sense, but so they have different needle sizes, like mag needles, which has up to 25 needles for traditional tattooing, where the needles that I'm using are the exact same needles that I'm using for eyebrows, eyeliner, lips, so it's a single needle. And that's where you get the fine line, is it's just a single needle. So it's more delicate, it's smaller, and that's what I said is, I mean, I could do a larger piece. It would take a lot longer because not as much ink comes out because there's only one needle opposed to 25 in my cartridge, right? And my clientele is a little bit different than you would see at a traditional tattoo, for instance, like in Salt Lake on State Street or something. 98% of my clientele is women. Not that I wouldn't tattoo a man, but men usually get more traditional, larger tattoos instead of the more feminine, dainty tattoos. So it's all needle size and piece size, basically.
Okay. And then you had mentioned specialized tattooing, like for breast reconstruction or
Yeah,
whatever
so,
like that. Is this something that you currently do?
No, so right now I'm about almost $10,000 in education as far as my piercing courses, my tattooing mentorship, and my permanent makeup schooling. I would like to go on to do medical tattooing, which is like helping people with scars, C-section scars, things like that, or even like I spoke about, the mastectomy patients, and it's the reconstruction of their nipple, basically. I haven't gone on to do that schooling because, again, I'm at an impasse here where if I can't work I'm having a hard time because I can do 2 of my art forms here and not the third, and so I'm having a hard time putting the money out to go do the medical tattooing because I don't know where I'm gonna land, right? So it is something I would like to do, but it's not something I currently do.
And my next question is, I know where your business is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys have limited hours there, and would you still continue to keep those limited hours?
Dale owns the salon. We don't have really set hours, like the salon's open from 9 to 5. We just kind of make our own appointments and what works for us in our family life and what works for a client. So there's some days I have an 11 a.m. client, and there's some times that I meet them at 6:30 because they've had to come from work. But as far as like late night hours, that's not something that I want to do as a mom, but the salon doesn't have like, we are only open from like 9 to 5. We don't have that. Because I mean, we have to accommodate people that are at work all day, right? So, yeah.
Thank you.
So help me understand, you've gone through what it sounds like a county regulatory application process to get licensure for the tattooing, correct?
So, well, the only thing I have from right now, we have a license in the salon from the health department that is our body art studio permit.
Right.
As far as me, I went and did a mentorship with a gal that's in Salem, and I have like a certificate and things like that. Same with my piercing, same with my permanent makeup. But there's no real licensing in the state of Utah to perform these things. You just kind of learn and go from there.
Okay.
But I
So-
do have my permit from the health department.
So are you also a beautician?
No?
Okay, but for beauticians, they have to go through the Department of Professional Licensing, right?
Yes.
And the tattoo artists don't? I'm a little surprised about that.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways, so there's a county regulatory, the health department,
Mm-hmm.
that has given your salon the go-ahead for
Yeah, we have the
tattooing.
permit on our wall. Yeah.
What's the process for that? Help me understand that.
They come at, well, you have to fill out an application, and they kind of go through it, not as intense as this, but they contact you, you fill out the application, they contact you, and they set up for someone an inspector, to come out, and they go through everything. You have to have all your jewelry, you have to have that, sent through an autoclave. They check your ink dates to make sure your ink isn't out of code. They check that all of your supplies are disposable. They check that your tattoo guns are in code with state law. They check, so when my people come in and get ear piercings or permanent makeup, or when I can do tattoos, they have to fill out a very lengthy, thank you, consent form. They check that and make sure all of those things are on there, allergies, if they hadn't have any like illnesses. I mean, they are so thorough. I mean, to the point where they check my sharps containers, they check my red bags that I have to throw all of my trash away in. I mean, it's very, very thorough. I had to have a hand washing sink. They came in and checked the hand washing sink. Yeah.
So does the county regulate differently if it's body art, the fine line versus the more 25 needle or whatever approach?
No.
So see, here's one of the problems, and let me just be really clear. I'm sort of in favor of opening up Centerville to make sure that we can have a tattoo establishment somewhere, personally. This is just me talking. The trouble is that as proposed, your language is so problematic in administering it that I'm currently looking for, is there a distinction that somebody has created out there in the legal framework that we can then say, okay, that's the end point for where your definition starts and ends? And it sounds like even the county doesn't differentiate between the two.
No.
So that's why it's problematic.
Sure. When you fill out the application for the health department, I wish I had one to show you, but at the top, it literally is just boxes that you check that you want them to come and check for you. So there was like tattooing, piercing, permanent makeup. I mean, so I just checked all of them, like I said, because I would like them to come out and say like, and he did say he was great. I had 2 of them actually come out, and they said, we go to a lot of places, and this is like, we're blown away. You guys have done a phenomenal job. So I don't know, maybe I should have written it differently, like salon settings. I don't know. I guess where I'm having a hard time is I can have these women or whoever that wants to come in and I can tattoo their face. And I mean, I am literally using the exact same needle size on their eyebrows. But if they wanted to stay and have an initial or a pet memorial put on or something, I have to turn them away, and it doesn't make sense because I'm already tattooing their eyebrows on. So I'm just having a hard time with that because it doesn't make sense to me. Like, it's okay to tattoo on someone's face, but I can't tattoo on their body.
And from what I'm hearing, the technique and the technology is identical.
It's identical. I should have maybe brought more show and tell, but the needles, like, it's the same. Like, if you scheduled in an appointment and she scheduled in an appointment, other than the colors that I would use on their brows,
Right.
The same tattoo gun, like, I mean,
I got it. The other point that we also need to, I'm going to remind you about, and then I'm also going to remind us again when we go to the public, we're making a decision for the whole city at large, and it's not just your salon, and it's not just your salon this year, it's for all salons in the future. That's one of the things that I'm having a hard time getting my hands around, is that this language might not be the right way to skin this cat, even though it's a cat that needs to be skinned.
sure, I understand that. I guess, again, I just am so established, and again, this is not just about me. I think it's a broader issue, but where I'm already tattooing, and you guys, not you guys, but Centerville City allows me to tattoo with the exact same equipment on somebody's face in a salon in a medium zone.
Right. I understand. So here's a question. Do you know if, to do nipple medical tattoos, if that's a different regulation?
From the health department?
Yeah.
No?
It's the same as?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So it was like the
Other
scar.
questions for the applicant?
No, your question regarding the health department and the body art was kind of what I was wanting to know a little bit more about.
Okay.
You had also mentioned something regarding the tattoo establishment. The difference is, I guess, it changes where you're putting the tattoos, it basically blends in with the face, whereas, or wherever you're putting it, so that you can't tell it's necessarily a tattoo.
Permanent, yeah, the permanent cosmetic, the term permanent cosmetic, that's the intent of it by the current definition.
Well, I mean, if you wanna, you can tell it's
I'm sorry,
there.
hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry. One person at a time. We've got to make sure that the record is clear. And also, if we can direct questions to the applicant, and then we'll go back to staff.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. I just don't want too much crosstalk.
Yeah.
You can for sure tell it's there. For instance, like my eyebrows, they're tattooed on. I think there's, I mean, I can have them come up like, there's
It's show and tell time.
lips, eyeliner. I mean, you can for sure tell it's there. Sure, would somebody that maybe saw you in Target and saw your wife with her permanent eyeliner know that she drew it on versus I tattooed it on?
Right.
Maybe not, but, I mean, it's very evident that somebody has a shaped eyebrow versus maybe somebody that doesn't. So yes, you can tell that it's on there.
I guess just more definition basis, because I'm just reading through some of the definitions. and
Now,
things.
on the scar revision, like the medical tattooing that I would like to move on to do, like a C-section scar, you can still see the scar, but it camouflages it, I guess would be like the correct verbiage for me to say. Like, sure, you can still see the texture's different, but that's maybe what Mike was saying, where it kind of blends into the skin.
Right.
But as far as
Whereas,
permanent
like, some of
makeup,
the example that you had up there a minute ago, that was an obvious difference from.
Sure.
Like, that's not a natural thing.
The
Sure.
definition for permanent cosmetic, she's pulled it.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
Harris one.
sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, tattoos is an art form, I mean.
Right, and going back to what she said about in Arizona, that it's.
Sure.
It's defined as like freedom of speech, so
Sure.
I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
all of it and what
Yeah.
you're coming from. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, additional questions? Thank you so much, Ms. Hutchins. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move to, well, actually, do you guys have follow-up questions for staff before we open things up?
I don't think so.
Okay. We're going to open this up to the public for comment, and here's how this works. So first of all, most of you don't know what we are and what we do. I didn't, certainly, before I started. We're not elected, first of all, which means we don't represent the voice of the people. We're not here to represent the people. We're appointed. Now, we do try to strive for what we are trying to find is the public good, and we have certain standards for that. Today's decision is what's called a legislative decision, and this is where if we find that, what in essence it's, let me just, distilling it down, there are two different major decisions we make. There's administrative and legislative. Administrative is A, does it meet the code, and if it does, we approve it. If B, it doesn't, then we don't. For a legislative decision, it boils down to, is this a good idea based on all of the context and all of the things that we take into consideration? And we're not even making the decision today. We're just making a decision about whether to forward it to your public officials, your elected officials, the city council. So recognize that when you come up for your comments, it's try to stay within those guardrails, if that makes sense, and help us make that decision about whether to table, whether to deny, or whether to forward with an approval. Does that make sense? I'm also going to limit you all to under 2.5 minutes. And if we need to do a second round, if people didn't get a full chance to speak their piece, then maybe we'll do that. But I just want to be efficient with everybody's time. Also, try not to be too repetitive. I'm sure that many of you have the exact same comment. And after 3 or 4, it may not be helpful, if that makes sense. What else? I think that's it. So I'm going to open the floor up to anybody who wants to come to the mic, say your name, where you live, and then provide your comment, please.
Hi, my name's Carrie Montoya. I live on 20 South 400 East Centerville. Been a Centervilleite for going on 2 years. Woo, love it here. My dad grew up in Centerville, lived here, died here. So I feel like I'm part of this community, I always have been. And I don't know why I'm crying, it's just what I do. So I apologize for that. I only know Nicole. Personally, I've met her 3 times. So I'm not here to, like, I love Nicole just from the 3 times I met her. I think she's great, but I just think a couple key points that you guys should know. The Utah Health Department actually has a line in their application that says fine line and tiny tattoo artists are different. It says there is a difference between tiny tattoo, fine line tattoos, and body tattoos. This type of body art requires a full-time 3-month apprenticeship as a permanent body art facility training outlined above before they can get their license. So that is already defined in the Utah Health Code on the fine line.
Can I pause? What website are you on?
I am looking at the Utah Health Utah Health Department. I just looked up their application.
So it's the
for-
statewide health department?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The other thing I wanted to notify is that the Salt Lake County Health Department approved over 459 body art permits since August 7th of this year. It is a growing trend, and it is a way for people to express who they are. Also, the LDS Church does have a relaxed take now on tattoos as of 2022 and the strength of the youth pamphlet. It suggests that we let spirits guide us on how we decorate our bodies and what we wear. So those are just some 3 points I'd like to add to your thought process.
Thank you.
Thanks.
He's backing me up here. But I've been doing hair in Centerville for like over 40 years.
Can I
I
pause for
gotta
just a
have my
second?
teleprompter too.
Can you say both of your names, please?
Karen and Dale George.
Go ahead.
Yep. First of all, thank you for your service to our community. Yes, we're Dale and Karen George. We've been owners of New Trends just down the street from you for over 40 years. And we thank you for providing us the opportunity to have our business in the community. Nicole is an employee of New Trends currently, and forever, I hope. But Karen and I have been privileged to own and operate New Trends for, like I said, 40 years in our community. New Trends is a hair salon, recently adding piercing, thanks to Nicole for her service in providing that. We like to brag that we have helped beautify our community for the past 40 years. We would like to expand our services by adding, like Nicole mentioned, permanent makeup and tattooing for those in the community that would like that service. As she stated, New Trends has received its permit from Davis County Health Department, come in and did a very, very thorough inspection. And so it is permitted. And as you can see, my opinion, that the tattooing has evolved into some beautiful art. And
Sir, could I pause you for a second? I think your paper is scratching up against the mic.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
It picks it up in the recording. It makes it hard to hear.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
But, yeah, we would, here to support her and ourselves and hope that we could get a yes vote from the commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Adrienne Lawrence, and I've been in Centerville for about 20-plus years. I have a couple questions. I'm wondering if, it sounds like from what I'm hearing, is the major issue how Mrs. Hutchins proposed the change of the verbiage?
And this isn't a question-answer phase. I will take all your questions down, and we'll try to provide responses at the end.
Oh,
So-
I just have questions.
That's fine. The major issue of how Ms. Hutchins proposed the change is what you said?
I was asking if that's one of the issues,
Okay.
like the major issues, is just the
Okay.
way it's worded. Because if that can be changed in order to push a motion through, I'm pretty sure that would be pretty flexible. And I know that the people in the community are in support of anyone who's trying to start a business to support their family, no matter what it is, because we have a right to create monetary value in our community and to support our families. And so to judge which way that comes about, I think it would be against our best interests as a community, specifically in regards to the First Amendment and freedom of speech and how you go about doing that. but I do have questions when that's the right time.
Right now is to you to ask them. It's just not going to be it's not going to be an exchange. We'll answer the questions at the end. We'll take your questions, but we're not going to do answers right now.
Okay,
That's just not how this phase works.
that's all right.
So
So
go ahead
that's
and
the
just lay them
question I
all out.
have.
Yeah.
And then the other question was, it seems like it could be for people, something that they would consider or an issue is what kind of demographics of people would be coming into our community if there was a facility like that available to them. And I'm curious if that's something that's concerning to people. And the consideration or question of all of the essential workers and people who are in our community, in our schools, in our hospitals, and in our police force, who are people who have tattoos on their body, if they are considered a part of our important community, and because of possibly what they're adorning on their body and not providing a facility that's clean and sanitary for them to get these things to express themselves in whatever way, if that's some sort of an issue also. I
So-
don't think it is. I think it should be provided. So,
Okay, what else?
I think that's it.
So if I'm understanding you, the questions are, is the wording the major issue? Is the demographic an issue? And if professionals can have tattoos, why can't we have a facility to provide tattoos? Did I
Yes.
capture that? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Cody Hutchins. I live over on Brookhurst Circle. I'm actually the spouse to Nicole Hutchins. I was born in 1982 in the city. My parents took me home to Pheasant Brook. When I was 1 year old in 1983, during the floods of '83, we moved into the house that they are still in to this day. Centerville has been my home forever, and hopefully it will be forever. Throughout that time, I've seen the city change immensely. I remember the time when it was just the Dairy Queen and the McDonald's. There was nothing at Target. There was no roads even right through there. As I've seen this city grow, I've been very impressed with everything, and I feel like that this falls in line with it as well. As we get older, as we grow as a community, we become more inclusive for the things, and tattooing fits into that. It's a way to express yourself. And it's not only for the people that we're used to seeing, you know, the outlaws, so to speak. That's no longer what tattoos are for. I know numerous grandpas who have acquired their first tattoos upon retiring at 70 years old. I know some grandmas that are going to get some tattoos of their grandkids. The stigma around tattooing, it isn't there anymore, and I really hope that the laws in Centerville change to accommodate that. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Brooke Cake. I live on 250 East, and I've lived in Centerville for 44 years. I just kind of wanted to touch what he talked about and tell you really quickly about my tattoo and what it does for me. I've dealt with depression since I was 10. The past 5 years, it's gotten really bad. I've recently been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, treatment-resistant depression, persistent depressive disorder, which leaves me feeling very hopeless because maybe I'll feel better one day, but chances are not in my favor. I'll probably always be depressed. I've been hospitalized for suicide, and I never thought I would get a tattoo. But I want to show you my tattoo. If you can see, is an ampersand, and it has 3 dots. I wake up many mornings not able to get out of bed. My thoughts are racing really fast. I'm thinking of ways to kill myself about how I want to do it. And when I do that, I look at my tattoo, which tells me that my story is going to continue, and it has 3 dots. And those 3 dots represent my kids, my 3 reasons to stay alive. And when I feel like that, I put my thumb on my tattoo, and I my heart. And I tell myself that, excuse me, my story will continue, and I'm going to stay here. Surprisingly to me, my tattoo gets a lot of attention when people see it. They ask me about it, and they know what it means. They know it's for suicidal awareness. And it's provided an open conversation when people talk to me about how they've been suicidal and ask me what I've done to get better. And it has opened up dialogue about getting help, what places to get help from, the 988 hotline, all those kind of things. What I'm trying to say is that tattoos are not, they have a negative connotation. But my tattoo means a lot to me, and I feel very lucky that I have it, and I think that it helps me, and I think that I'm not the only one that feels that way. So thank you.
Thank you.
You hear me?
Yeah.
How you guys doing? My name's Al Harrison. Live in Park at Legacy Trails, just west of Maverick, over on the other side of the highway. Been here for about 9-10 months. I was born and raised in Bountiful, about a block south of, or a block west of Beaumont. Lived here my whole life. A couple points I just want to touch real quick. Believe you asked a question earlier about fine line tattooing is the difference. You can see this is more traditional tattooing. My wife, I know she's not going to get up, she doesn't like talking, has more traditional size of a sticker. And you're not going to see the type of clientele, I guess, getting this you would compared to what she gets. Second part of this is kind of what was said earlier, just kind of what tattooing is and what it does. It tells a story. Looking at my arm, you would never know it, but it tells a story to me. It tells a story of my family in southern Utah. It tells a story of my faith, my family. It means a lot to me. And it's something that I can remember I've always wanted. I've grown up in this community. I've grown up in this county. And I'm trying not to get emotional about it because it's a topic I don't like talking about. I can remember going through high school. I got my first tattoo when I was 18. And having my family, my friends, people in my neighborhood shun me for the fact that I decided to get a tattoo. And I would just ask to take that into consideration that, do you want to be the person that kid at 13 years old, when he tells his uncle that he wants to get a tattoo, get shunned? Do you want to be that person that you remember that for the rest of your life? Because I will. I mean, I've got family I refuse to talk to because I made the decision to tell a story on my body about things I love, the people I hold dear, and my faith. And they still, to this day, can't understand why I would decide to do that. But I just wanted to come up and offer that little bit of the stories that are told and things that it's a lot more detailed than what Cody said. This isn't the 80s. This isn't biker bars and gangland tattoos. This is, you're telling stories. You're showing your personality. You're showing, I mean, I've got my favorite quote in the Bible is Romans 8:31, which is, if God be with us, who can be against us? Now, many people look at it and go, well, he's got a tattoo, but at the end of the day, I'm showing my faith, I'm showing my story, I'm showing what it means the most to me in this life. So I just want to leave you guys with that.
Thanks, sir. All right, last call. Very good. So I will close the public phase of the hearing. I want to express to you my gratitude for how vulnerable some of you have been. That was rough. Thank you. All right. Questions? Actually, no, sorry, back to the applicant. So Mrs. Hutchins, you have a chance to respond, if you wish, to any of the comments that were provided by the public. All right, that is declined. Questions back to staff.
Well, in addition to the 3 that you wrote down, to staff.
How about I lead out?
You do that.
So, is the major issue how the language was proposed? And I'll wade in there, and I'd also invite Mr. Romney, Mr. Agat. The answer is yes for me, because the way that I read it, I think that it does it has both an under sweep as well as an over sweep, the way that it's phrased. And I personally don't understand enough of the health regulatory overlay to know whether or not this is A, even needed, or B, not far enough, if that makes sense. So I'm curious if either of you have responses to that particular question.
I mean, from my perspective, if you look at my summary, that's exactly, I have to look at it from an administrative perspective and how I administer the code, right?
Right.
And I have to look at us reading the code and trying to understand how it applies in all cases. And I have a business licensing specialist who's been with the city for a lot of years that doesn't quite understand how it's going to be applied because it's a newer topic. It's not really clear about what the definitional I guess, procedures are as it relates to the code that's being reflected today. And further, there may be other solutions that could be explored to accommodate the applicant's request within the medium zone while maybe not broadly applying the tattooing to all commercial zones, but limiting the fine line tattoos. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's multiple routes to solutions that could be explored, rather than the really broad approach that's been presented.
Right.
So that's the nature of my concern as an administrator of the code and what's been requested.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. All right. Sorry, it's the process. We went through the process. Are people concerned about the kind of demographic? Does anybody, staff, respond to that?
Again, coming back to what I said as I was doing the review, I think that we need to be very careful about zoning discrimination. And I think that it's not a question of demographic as much as it's a process of procedurally, what should that look like and where do we, I mean, there's a lot of residents that are not here today that may feel very differently than what's here today. And I'm just going to bring that up because I think that's relevant. And so just because all the other voices aren't here today, they may have different opinions. So we really have to think about, are all those voices that aren't here, as well as those that are here, comfortable with the idea of having this request in all zones, or a variation of the request, or is it even tiered? Is it lower impact in the medium, just like the zoning, right? A little bit higher in the heavy and even higher and very high, and do we even allow it in the industrial? And so I don't think it's a question of those people or demographic or that as much as it is how does the community as a whole perceive it and what levels of application should it be relative to the zoning that is accommodating it similar to other uses in the community.
Right. Because as I understand it, we don't care about demographics. We care more about whether or not it's a proper exercise of our authority to regulate in order to preserve the health, safety,
Correct.
and welfare
police
of the
power,
public.
That's correct.
And it doesn't matter to me whether you're, a different race, or if you're a different religion, or if you're different creed. We don't regulate on those bases. And so the stigma behind tattoos is something that we as a planning commission should not take into consideration at all, if there even were a stigma. And for some, I'm sure they believe that. Others don't. That's my understanding, is that that's something that we don't take into consideration and shouldn't. Third question, if the professionals can have tattoos, why can't we have a facility to provide tattoos? And if anybody wants to weigh down on that, I feel like that's sort of been answered, where it's not about whether or not professionals can have tattoos, it's whether or not the facility is going to be administratable. All right. Questions?
Well, and then as I understand it, you can clarify for me, but currently, the city's codes do not allow for tattoo establishments, but they do allow for permanent cosmetics.
That's correct.
And so the question that raises is that current position discriminatory? And, you know, do we see it that way, right? And that maybe that's up for debate, but, so yeah, and I don't know, it may be difficult from an administrative position to make a distinction between, I guess, full tattooing and fine line tattooing. And if the wording is adjusted such that fine line tattooing falls in the same category as permanent makeup, maybe that's a stretch, I don't know, but, you know, I don't know if that's a distinction that can be made, but, I'm kind of just thinking out loud here, right, as far as how to define this. So really, right now, tattoo establishment is not allowed anywhere in the city.
That is correct.
Something that we can include in our recommendation is, should it be allowed somewhere? And should it be allowed in medium commercial?
Which is
currently
least
written.
and it's the least impactful commercial. And that, I would say, make sure that you look at the definition of commercial medium, commercial high, and commercial very high, and what kind of uses match that from a zoning perspective. And if we need to, we could even pull up a zoning map, if that would help at some point. But anyway, I
Yeah.
don't want to get ahead of myself, but yeah.
Yeah, and so the three motions that are included here, at least partly address dealing with that. So, yeah, I mean, I think we can go through those motions and see if we can find the best fit.
And thinking out loud along with that, it's weird that there is no tattoo establishments allowed, but she had fully said the needle that she uses is the exact same thing that it would be for fine line tattooing. So I'm like, obviously there are tattoo establishments, so to speak.
That's
that are
why,
here. So
that's
we-
why I
we
brought
need-
that
We need
forward.
deeper clarification and more, and so
It's
maybe
defined
not
as
with.
permanent makeup, right?
Yeah, yeah, because it's, we already have it, but just better to find, and maybe, and as, you know, we've already mentioned, maybe this, what was presented to us isn't the best, but we can figure out a better way to put it.
So I have a couple things to say.
Well, are we moving on the, forward past the phase where we're asking questions and we're just going to deliberate? Or do you have questions for staff?
I guess this could be a question for staff. I don't know if it would be discussion or a question for staff. But the difference between the fine line to a regular tattoo, right? He was just talking about that. If that is something, I'm not saying that it is or that it's not, but if that was something that was approved or allowed, how is that regulated, controlled, or overseen?
And that would be, again, that comes back to all the uncertainties and unknowns, right? If we go and create a new, because I've been thinking that through as well. If we create a new definition that's not regulated by the county or the state, do we have the, for lack of a better word, the manpower and or the understanding of how to regulate or check that if we were to create a distinction? Because if we do now create a definitional distinction and apply it, somebody will have to administrate verifying that that distinction is being followed. And the applicant may do everything correctly, right? It may be the next person that doesn't want to do it correctly, but the code allows for it. Now how do we investigate or inspect to make sure it's being done correctly, right? I have no question that the applicant will run a fine operation, but maybe somebody won't.
Right.
As we look at this, that's where we need to better understand the bumpers and the mechanisms because of those kind of questions.
Okay.
I appreciated what Lisa said, Lisa, when you brought up not just Arizona, but the different districts, but you also said that the state and the county have regulations and, I guess, specifications or standards. We don't know what those are. I think that we don't have very much information, because you told us all that you have, correct?
Yes, there's a number of different, so there's state regulations and state statutes. So there's state statutes, and then they give the Department of Health the authority to draft rules and regulations. And so those are very lengthy rules and regulations that we haven't had an opportunity to review. But I think one point is that having these rules and regulations in place by the state and the county help address the city's concern for public health and safety, which I think historically has been why some tattoo parlor regulations are, prohibited in certain cities because maybe they had more health concerns if they weren't regulated, but they are regulated now by both the county and the state. And so we could look at those and say, and provide information that, yes, it's a highly regulated area now, so we can eliminate that concern with this kind of use.
So we could get further information from, or you guys could, looking at the statutes and the laws of the state and the county, right?
Yes, we could.
Provide further information that we still are unaware of or that you may be unaware of. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So my question was back to post-mastectomy nipple reconstruction. Is that currently allowed under our code? I had understood that it is not.
I'm pretty sure it's anything above the neck or above the face.
Because it has to be makeup.
It says solely for enhancing facial features
Right.
is what the permanent
So
cosmetics.
as it currently stands, we have a ban on medical, post-medical procedure tattooing.
Unless it falls under another definition.
Right.
So again, it could be
Right.
medical services,
Right.
but we'd have to look at the
That's
use
true.
and our specific
Yeah, that
definitions
is
if it's
true.
covered by a more broad
Because I
definition.
do know some doctors' offices have tattoo artists.
Yeah,
for
and
that
some,
particular
in
purpose.
looking at some other cities' codes, they do classify some of those other things as permitted under medical services.
Right. Right. Well, some holes.
Right, but I think what
we
you
need
said
to
is
fix.
correct. Currently, in Centerville,
Not
not
allowed.
allowed.
Yeah, not allowed.
Well, it's not allowed under the definition of permanent cosmetics.
Fair enough.
That's correct.
Okay. I think those were all my questions. You guys have any other questions? And then
For staff,
we'll
no.
phase over to deliberations. Okay, so this is the deliberations phase. Anybody want to lead out?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So I appreciated what Mike said about, is the community comfortable with it? Because we have 4 of us representing, our entire city, right? Or thinking about if the community is comfortable with it or not. It's particularly in all commercial zones, but we don't have anybody here on the other side. I don't know that anybody was aware of it. They they probably had the opportunity if they looked on it online, but I think as a community, they didn't really know about that. And I think that we should always have both sides represented. I really appreciated what Lisa and Mike said and what we just kind of went over, that according to the Utah law, and Davis County, we have too many unknown variables. We don't know exactly what all the standards are and the terms. As currently written, it's too broad. It's not specific enough. And I had something else. Hold on just a second. I kind of want to, I don't know that we can know why we can't have tattoo places here. I don't know. I don't know. For me, we don't have enough information to make a proper decision.
So what's the additional information that you're looking for?
Well, they're wanting to, I'm just needing more. There's too many holes. There are too many holes for me as a city, as how things currently are written, why we don't allow tattoo parlors. Maybe that is the thing that was voted on by the people. I have no idea. How we change things from tattoo to permanent cosmetics. If we allow that, are we opening up the gate? If people don't want tattoo stores or parlors here, are we opening up the gate then? The floodgate of allowing permanent makeup, but people taking it too far? Do we create further regulations? Oversight? I don't know. There's a lot of holes for me. It's kind of like Swiss cheese right now. There's just a lot of holes right there.
Okay. Mills?
I think I'm kind of in the same ballpark that there's a better maybe wording that, and she was fully aware of it as well and open to it. It wasn't like she wasn't, she was just putting her best foot forward. And it, open to be able to, whatever the you know, the staff could help her with to be able to get it more in line with whatever future brings up. As I had mentioned before, it's kind of interesting that fine line tattooing is basically what's happening now, but just in a different part of the body and more cosmetic, but it's kind of the same thing. And so I think just further clarification is what we're shooting for. Is that what I kind of understood from you, Larry?
Yeah, I want further clarification on that, but then again, if we actually open that up, how is that being overseen?
Right.
I'm not all about Big Brother. I'm not all about things being highly regulated, but there's a fine line there that needs to be well defined.
Did you mean that as a
I see what I did there. No, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it, but now I do. No, I mean.
Commissioner Larson?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, in my mind, I want to make a distinction between a full tattoo establishment and the permanent cosmetics to possibly include fine line tattooing. I think there are different levels and should be treated as such, but I understand how that could be tricky, and maybe there's a gray area between them and there's overlap, right? So, that I can see how that puts the city in a position where it's gonna become a case by case, having to make a judgment every time it comes up, which is the last thing we want,
Right.
We want clear, well-defined, codes that the public can understand and the city can understand. So, but I do think, my feeling is we need to consider an opportunity for tattoo establishments in Centerville. Whether or not it's in a medium zone or, you know, high, I'm open for debate on that. I think that the way that the code's written right now is probably something that was written a long time ago and nobody's rethought recently, and so here we are, right? But, yeah, I mean, that's where I stand, and I don't know, right off the best way to reword or define the terms, better to achieve that. I would look for some help on that.
So my thoughts are pretty much the first thought I had when I started reading the report, which was, we don't allow tattoo parlors? What? That floored me, and I continue to be floored by it. If the technology and the techniques are almost identical, and all we're quibbling about is real estate, like, is it gonna be this big, or is it gonna be this big, or is it gonna be this big, or is it gonna be that big, then we're starting to wade into really, really problematic waters legally, as I see it. To try to regulate on that, on what basis? On what health, safety, and welfare basis do we have to say, you can do a fine line, but you can't do a sleeve? I don't see one. So, the way I see it is that I don't think we need both sides. I think we have enough known. Just the language in front of us is not good. Administratively, I can see legally why that would be really hard, which is why I was digging for somebody or something or someone to give me a great definition that some other legal mind has already thought of for, okay, here's where you step from, an ampersand into a sleeve, and this is when and how you get to license that and where you get to license it, and here's why you get to regulate that. And one of the public comments was on the state website that they defined differences. I can't find that. I can see one from the Southwest Utah Health Department, but even then they go on to say that they basically treat tattoos, body art and fine line tattoos almost identically. So here's my question, is that I see no reason as we live in a pluralist society to be informed by the stigma behind tattoos that religion brings to it. I see no reason for that to be a basis for our decision here. What I do see is that the language in front of us doesn't accomplish it in the way that I want it to be accomplished in a regulated manner. That's my thought. But the fact that we have a full ban was surprising to me, right? I think that needs to be remedied.
Is that something that we can address, or is that something that you guys need to
Council.
address? As far as the code goes? Like, looking at, I know we're redoing the general plan.
Right.
Is this something that's included in that? Like, kind of like walls and fences.
Right.
Like how we're hashing and
Ironically, it
rehashing
feels
this.
very similar. I mean, and I may look to Lisa to help me with this, but as I'm thinking it through, we do have a legitimate applicant request, and the applicant has a right, obviously, to pursue the procedural request, right, to council. I mean, we could always offer or discuss a directive to look at maybe some administrative definition or request to further refine the language, or alternatively, let the applicant advance based on whatever recommendation is made, and then go through the city council and see how the city council responds, and then if we're directed to bring it back like we did with walls and fences, review it that way. I feel like I want to be sensitive to the applicant's request with the due process nature of the request, right? And not have them get stuck in, well, staff and the planning commission want to table it so they can massage and work on our language. Again, unless the applicant is comfortable with doing that, in which case that may be something, but I guess what you're hearing me say is there may need to be a discussion with the applicant to see their thoughts at the discretion of the chair and the planning commission, how you'd want to proceed
Yeah.
based on whatever motion you make.
That's fair. So the way I see it is that there's a couple options in front of us. We could bring the applicant back up to see what their preference is on moving forward. We could table it. We could forward it with a recommend to deny, or we could forward it with a recommend to approve the language as is, or we can come up with our own language. I'm not prepared to come up with language.
We don't know enough.
I don't see how I'm equipped to do that right here.
Are you still thinking? Are you wanting a recommendation? What, you're just still
So
enjoying?
this is what my instinct says, is that we forward it with a denial, but with a clear note to the city council that we need something. Something needs to be done appropriately. Differently. Like a full ban doesn't make any sense. If once upon a time the full ban was because there was no necessary oversight in order to make sure that people were safe, great. That made sense. That totally makes sense. But unlike, say, some of these other forbidden areas, like a liquor store, for example, I can see why the police power would say, yeah, we're not going to put that here. And I'm sure Bountiful loves it because they get the commercial revenue from it. And in fact, I think Centerville would be well informed in opening that up, but that's not here. What I'm saying is that the knock-on effects and the deleterious effects from tattoo parlors, as I see them, are not the kind that perhaps when the code originally said nowhere, no how, are still in play. And I just think that it needs to be put somewhere. In the same way that we determined, and I know that this was legislative, for the marijuana growing, it needs to be put somewhere. And so that's sort of, those are my thoughts. Whether we table it to allow the applicant to come up with better language to get advice on how to do that, or whether it goes to city council and then we, as a goal over the next year, set it as yet another one of our goals of trying to plug a hole in the code.
So I'm thinking this through, if we were to deny it with the recommendation to council to address.
Forwarded a recommendation to deny.
Right. Then what that would do for the applicant is it puts them in the position where they would have to reapply later if they want to move forward. If we table it and allow them to rework language, it would come back to this committee before it would move on to the city council. And I guess in either case, the applicant's gonna have to, you know, reconsider, rework the language, work with the city on coming up with language that would be acceptable to the council. I guess I was favoring the tabling approach. That would allow them to then, you know, go back and rework this, go back and forth with the city internally to come up with something that seems more agreeable, and then represent.
If we table, though, she can say whatever she wants to change verbiage, but then we still have to figure out commercial zones, right? Where is it good? Where is it best? Where is it better? Where is it safe? Where is it not allowed? Well, so that is still gonna be an issue.
But if we deny or send a denial to the city council, what would happen in regards to the city zones then? I mean, it would.
Either way, we have to
Either
do
way,
it.
we'd have to do it, right?
I guess I'm not fully understanding that. Because if we recommended to deny and it went to city council, then, can you clarify that for me?
Would it then, and then, let's say that they deny it, would it then, would she have to then pay another fee and have it come back to us? And it would start the whole ball rolling again?
Am I allowed to answer that
Yeah,
question?
Will you
yeah.
please?
So obviously, if it procedurally were to go to council, it would go with your recommendation. They'd have access to staff's recommendation from this meeting to the planning commission, right? So the city council would do a de novo review based on that information. They'd have all the evidence plus your commentary, whatever findings you make, plus our commentary, right? And then we would do a presentation as well. The council will then debate the merits of it and come to whatever conclusion they make. Were they to deny it, to answer your question, that doesn't mean that, although the applicant's case might be denied, much like the fences and walls, and what specifically was requested doesn't happen, we still, as a planning commission, either from directive of the council or even internally within the planning commission planning staff, could recognize the hole, whether it's a gaping hole or a small hole, and how quickly we want to address it and work on that. The downside for the applicant is that it wouldn't necessarily be a timely consideration of resolving the issue, because we can see the gravity of what we're talking about and how it affects multiple zones, right?
Right.
So, in either case, I don't know that it's going to be a quick turnaround to address immediately the solution the applicant is asking for. Do I think we can address it and get to a solution? I do. It's just, do we want to try to address what we can now, kind of like fences and walls, address what we can now to try to work with the applicant, satisfy the applicant's need, or do we want to look at it more holistically, let her go through the process, and then look at it more holistically as a planning commission, as a city, and attack it, the more broad gaping hole that is this conversation topic? I hope that makes sense, but that's how I think I'd answer your
It does make
question.
sense to me.
Okay. All right, I think, I'm going to ask the applicant to come back up to the podium if that's okay. This is a little out of order, but we do have some latitude. So you've heard sort of some of our qualms. This isn't a time to re-argue the same points. My question to you is this: what would you like to see happen if we're either going to forward it with a denial so that you can then start and you'll go in front of the city council and you'll argue the same thing, and our decision-making today is simply a recommendation. They have what's called a de novo review, where they start from the scratch, basically, and they can come up with their own crafted solutions. Would you like to do that? Would you like to have it tabled, and then you can work with whomever you'd like to work with to try to recraft something to make it more tailored to address some of our concerns? And let me highlight this for you. It's difficult sometimes when applicants come in front of us trying to solve their problem. And I'm very sympathetic to the problem that we're trying to solve. But what you're asking us to do is to paint with such a broad brush that all of these zones across the city are then permitted or given a conditional use for this activity, when we're not fully prepared to understand the ramifications of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I guess my only issue with that is you guys are permitting me to do the exact same thing that I'm asking to do.
Right, and I'm going to stop you there. So I agree with you. The technique and the technology is identical, and it needs to be solved. What I'm asking is, Do you want us to forward this to the city council so you can have your due process with them? Or would you prefer it to table so that you can come up with a better solution that might work?
City council.
Okay, understood, thank you. All right.
So based on that.
Yeah, based on that, I'll make a motion that we forward this with a recommend to deny. And I'll add my personal note that the fact that we have no tattoo parlors needs to be fixed. There must be something in the code, and I would recommend that there be something conditional, a conditional use on the table in possibly the commercial high, the commercial very high, and maybe the industrial. It would make sense to me that we craft something in the code that something like that happen. That's my motion.
Since you made that motion, are we allowed to add?
If you want to amend it, propose to amend it. Do you have an amendment to propose?
Gosh, yeah, I did, but I don't remember exactly what you said.
Okay, let me say it again. This is
Say
my
it one more
motion.
time.
I'm going to recommend that we forward it with a recommend to deny. The basis for, and I need to add this, the basis for denial is that the current language as proposed by the applicant does not have a tailored enough approach for us to not be able to understand the ramifications of the language. It's such a broad solution that I don't think that it meets either the general plan or the administrative needs as expressed in the staff report. Those are my recommendations for denial. But again, I'll emphasize, we need something fixed here. We must have something in the city that allows, and I'm not just talking body art, I'm talking tattoo parlors. And I'm saying that there should be a conditional use in at least one of the zones, if not more. My gut says commercial high, commercial very high, and industrial, but that's my motion.
The only hesitation I have with supporting that is, so what the applicant is not asking for tattooing, the full-scale tattooing.
I know.
They're only asking for the fine line along with the permanent cosmetics.
Which is why it's so problematic for me.
Yeah, well, it is a hard line to draw,
Right.
right? But, so even if the city council comes back and says, well, in the industrial zone, we can allow full tattooing, it doesn't address their concern. That this is, the reason it's coming before us. So if we do this approach of deny, and then, hey, we recommend looking at another place for tattoo, again, it doesn't address the request being brought before us.
It does, at least as I see it.
It denies it.
It denies it, yeah. Because the language as written, to administratively tell somebody that you have moved from a fine line into a not fine line there's no line between that.
Can't administer that.
It's almost impossible to administer given our understanding in front of us today. If there's a regulatory body that has made a clear definition, then I would love to see it.
Understand.
I think that's more what it is.
Yep.
So the only thing I would want to add to that would be that, and maybe you covered it enough, but in my mind, I don't think it was covered enough, is looking at our code to address from, maybe there are people who don't want that, to address that from that way so that we have both sides.
That's right. And that's why we have public notices, and if the public doesn't want to pay attention enough, they can't be heard to complain is the way I see it. So, kind of a harsh result, but at the same time, if we want the other side, then the other side has to pay attention.
Right, so as currently stated by you or suggested by you, what I hear you saying is that you want the council to look at allowing tattoo places here. Is that accurate?
That's close. Procedurally, I don't think that what's in front of us is going to work administratively, and so that's why I'm recommending a denial. I'm simply adding an editorial that if the city council, as it considers this denial, is also understanding why I'm denying it, it's not because there's a stigma, it's not because there's a problem in regulation with like the fact that nobody is overseeing it. I don't see it as an unsafe practice. I simply see it as, if we're going to try to draw an arbitrary line between tattoo parlors and body art parlors that are fine line tattoos, those definitional requirements in order to administer are almost impossible. And it's so qualitative that I don't think it's bearable. So if someone were to come in front of us with a more clear definition about how they could make that work and how it would be easy enough on our administrative body to work, then I could see it happening. But I don't, as it is in front of us. So my editorial to the city council is help them understand the why I'm saying what I'm saying. It's not, I have nothing but I think laudatory comment for the idea of being able to perform this kind of work. It's just the proposal in the statute as it's proposed, the amendment to the statute, is unworkable. So,
I would agree with that.
yeah.
So Mike, just a question, if it goes as a denial to city council with that editorial, when we are working on the zoning plan as a planning commission, can we raise this again
You can make whatever priority you want.
and recommend that to the council?
Yes, and that's what I was saying, is we could take note of, again, whether it's something internally within the body of the planning commission or even the council directive, which may come, we don't know, right? Clearly, we can make it a priority. The question will be, how high of a priority do we want to make it, and how much energy do we want staff to put into working on it
Right.
at that point?
Knowing your limited bandwidth, we're currently working on the wall.
Fences and walls, which also is tricky, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
I would consider this a hole in our code.
Yep.
One that I was discomfited to learn we have. And it does need to be fixed. I cannot say that what's in front of us is the fix. That's where I'm stuck. And so my motion is that this isn't the fix, so therefore we'll forward it with a denial. However, something needs to be fixed. That's my editorial.
And we have the applicant who said that they would rather take it to council.
Right, and that's fair.
So I'm with you.
Yep. And council may very well just say, no, planning commission, we want this, 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 and that, and then they pass it. So,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'm putting together that whole thing, whoever the city or.
Okay,
I want to read something that we were given in training, just to you guys too. So our job as a commission is not to solve or resolve. It is to make land use decisions and consider the entire city and how codes or ordinances affect the entire city. We evaluate the effects of possible changes to code. So I think we've done a lot of good discussion, and we can't solve or resolve tonight.
Right.
Nor is that our job.
okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? So we'll start down here.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimous. So here's procedurally what will happen. It will be forwarded with a denial to the city council. You'll be scheduled for, I'm guessing, the next city council meeting?
Yeah, November 5th.
November
would be
5th.
The timeline.
At the November 5th meeting, they will be reviewing our comments, including our clear commentary that something needs to change, just that we are discomfited by this current language for its wieldability, if that makes sense. And then you'll go from there. Thank you, everybody, for your participation tonight. It's been really great.
Thank you.
All right. All right.
Just one comment that the next meeting or the next available, so we have public hearing requirements and
Oh, that's right.
additional, we may have staff want to add some
Yeah,
additional things, so.
it may not be November 5th, it may be the November, do we have one before Thanksgiving?
Yes, November 19th is the other alternative.
Depends on when they're able to slot it on the agenda, so,
And it'll be
thank
on the
you.
website.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, it's
that's
the
right.
6th.
6th, that's
Yeah,
right.
we pushed it.
That's right, I forgot that.
Thank you, everybody. And you can stick around for the rest of the meeting, it's
Thursday.
scintillating.
Wednesday. Yeah, this council meets on Tuesdays.
All right, Community Development Director's report. Go ahead, Mr. Eggett.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. I just want to note, we were going to bring back tables and fences today. But as we discussed, the three of us, about tables and fences, and as there was a clear directive from the Planning Commission to look at imagery that might help with this discussion, as we further even discussed variations on how the codes that had been provided to.
Let me pause for just a second.
Can we close the door now?
Yeah, no, we don't close the door because it's a public meeting.
City council, we close the door.
Not supposed to. At least that's been my training.
They were elected, they can do whatever they want.
Anyways, I think that's quieted down. Thank you.
So what I was saying is, and we've talked about internally, variations even with some of the codes that were provided to the Planning Commission the first time we discussed it, and how those would be applied, and better understanding how those are applied. We're starting to see with some imagery that was quickly drawn up by Lisa, actually, that helped us to better understand it. So we want to put together better imagery and bring that forward to the Planning Commission at your next meeting.
Thank you.
So we'll schedule that for a public hearing.
What is
The next meeting, I will say, is planned to be here for a while that night. We have 3 or 4 public hearing items that are coming. So just know that it will be a little longer meeting than you're probably used to at the next meeting.
This is the 6th.
13th. 13th.
Oh.
will be a little bit more of an involvement.
Oh, got it.
But please be here.
But please be here, because they're all important items.
What are they?
You're gonna see.
We
They're-
have
Zoning amendment, area amendment.
Yes, if somebody wants to do a rezone of an area, there wants to be a conditional use permit for a home bakery, and then there is the general plan. and then the general plan, and then there's one more item.
The fences and walls.
Fences and walls, so there's 4 items.
And the general plan, our general plan consultant will be here to finally give you an update, do a presentation, and
Cool.
try to get some feedback from you.
That'll be great. We can
That'll
ask
be a
them
good reason to
where the tattoo parlors should go.
Yes, you
Accurate.
can.
Put a pin on the map.
We will just need snacks and drinks.
Yeah, I'll be bringing a sack dinner.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that should be really good. We're pretty excited just to plug the general plan. It's at a point where the maps and the visualizations are starting to get finalized. They're trying to identify a public activity. It's looking maybe like the Christmas tree lighting activity right now to put the imagery up in the gazebo and let the public kind of comment on what they do and don't like of elements of it and provide
Yes.
feedback.
Yeah.
But it's at the point where we do have some updated representations. But you'll see it prior to it going to that community event when he brings that and presents
In
that.
addition to that, are we doing any, is it going out in any newsletter by chance?
Not
thought
at
about
current
that?
time because it's not at that point in the process phase.
I mean, just in the future,
Um,
theoretically.
when you say in the newsletter, what specifically are you?
Don't we have a quarterly?
We get the Centerville thing, and Clark always, the mayor gives us his.
Oh, you're just talking
on the
about
front page.
advertisement that we're in a general plan process generally, and
Yeah.
there's a commentary. Yeah, there's a commentary website. I have to, I'm continually working with our communications team.
Right.
Right now, there is a link on the website to go and you can add commentary to the online general plan page. I don't know if it's been put in the city newsletter, candidly. I have talked to our communications team about trying to find ways to continually promote it. I know he was looking at specifically putting some plugs on our social media channels as well for it, just to get the word out. We did see, in talking to the general plan team a little bit, we saw a really heightened interest initially. There's hit a lull, so that's why we repost on the website to try to get that interest. But I'll continue to explore ways to get that out there.
Who drafts the newsletter? And am I using is it a newsletter or is it a?
Is it Bryce,
So,
Lisa?
Centerville, something newsletter, I thought.
Centerville
Message from the mayor, we always get that.
It's usually like 4 or 8 pages or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could have a
Bryce.
QR
Sounds like
code in
Bryce,
there,
yeah.
right, that people could do
The-
something.
This is my question. The query is that if it were to go out with that, I just wonder if it might be helpful.
And get more people possibly.
Well,
Yes. Most people don't go to the
agree.
website.
We are definitely trying to drive traffic to the best way to get immediate commentary on the general plan is to use that website link and go and look at the map and write comments on it. You can actually go on the map, click a location, write some comment about it. This route is fairly dangerous at this intersection, right? Or this park, we would like to see more amenities at this park, those kind of things. That's what this tool does
But
provide.
Mason, what you're suggesting is maybe putting it out there, knowing that the website is an option for
Yeah,
us to even.
like, I
do
just-
Well, I think part of the whole, there was a large part of public outreach, so I think the consultants are aware, and the
Okay.
city wants to
Okay.
definitely get that out, but it's a large part of
Yeah,
why
and-
we went with this company in the first place.
Yeah, if that's your question, there've already been two public interaction experiences. They've contracted to do a third one.
Okay.
And that'll be the rollout portion of that. But the commentary on this online portal is still being accepted and welcomed, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Are we fine to put that on the Centerville page? There are lots of Centerville
There's
pages.
I mean, if somebody wants to sponsor it from the city website that has access to those channels, I don't see any reason to have
Okay.
that.
By Centerville page, you mean like Facebook page?
Uh-huh,
Yeah, because I know that there's a couple.
right.
Facebook
Laura runs a really
pages.
good one and
Yeah.
puts
Yeah.
information out
Yeah,
there all the
anything we can
time.
do to get, I mean, it's a significant project that has long-term legacy impacts, so
And
the community should
The more
participate.
people that can participate,
Exactly.
the more views we'll get. Like you were saying with tonight with the tattoo, we had one angle, coming, but we
Right.
didn't have the other side.
Well, I guess that's where I'm maybe not understanding. We haven't put it in the newsletter. For people who don't go online and don't use social media, the newsletter is kind of all they get.
Yeah, it's in the mail.
And there are a lot of elderly people.
It comes
that
with their bill.
Yeah, it comes with their
Right.
bill. Is there not a way that we could just say, hey, go to this website in the newsletter?
And we will communicate that to our communications team, to Bryce. But I don't personally
Yeah,
do the newsletter.
okay. I was just curious.
And our contractor has initially, when they first came through, they did talk to and work with Bryce and his team on communications. I just don't know what the nature is of that conversation,
Okay.
to answer your question, I guess.
All right. Okay, training module.
I think for the sake of time, we can skip it tonight.
Twist my arm.
Just know that this one is not nearly as involved as the last three were. I can go through this training at a future date much faster than the last three.
Very good. Reviewing the minutes of prior meeting from October 9th. Anybody have any proposed amendments or corrections?
I did not.
I don't do.
All right, I'll take a motion.
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
All right, I second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I will take a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion to
I will
adjourn.
second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.